All right, so we're talking next about amends. We've covered forgiveness. Now we need the amends piece, and then we can move on to reconciliation. So, amends. There's 5 parts to what I think of as a proper amends. So, first part is confession. Basically, hey, I did it. Second part is apology. I'm sorry. Now, unfortunately, this is often where people stop, and sometimes they'll even say, "Hey, I said I admitted I did it. I said I was sorry. Why can't you just forgive me?" And sometimes in horrible situations, the person says, "I said I'm sorry. You're supposed to be a Christian. Why don't you forgive me? Some Christian you are," stuff like that. So, yeah, that's not helpful. And often, and again, I mentioned in the last one that, the last video, that forgiveness, you don't need an amends in order to forgive, but an amends certainly can help you to forgive. It can at least prompt you to forgive if you haven't been quite able to get there on your own. But again, amends isn't required for forgiveness. Oftentimes, the reason people withhold forgiveness before they get an amends is they feel like that means they have to go back into relationship with the person, and if they forgive them, and that just isn't the case. You don't have to go back into relationship with the person if you've forgiven them. You can still have boundaries, you can still have limits, and we'll talk about that in future sessions when we talk about boundaries and limits. But all of that said, amends, first 2 parts, I did it, I'm sorry, confession, and apology. Third part is empathy. I can understand how you would feel, hurt, angry, betrayed, whatever. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes. We talked about empathy back in the beginning of this course. And empathy is simply perspective taking. It is connecting with a time that you felt how the person feels who's got the emotion, whether that's anger or hurt or betrayal or whatever. Just remember, like, when's the last time you felt betrayed? When's the last time you felt hurt? This is what they're feeling, and then connect with the emotion, okay? That's what they're feeling. So you can offer some empathy to show that you understand how your actions have impacted them. That's the third part. Fourth part is to repair or repay. So this is like, I'm going to make it up to you, basically. And some things are real easy to repair, repay. It's kind of like a 1-for-1 transaction. You stole $20, here's $20 back, that type of thing. But other times it's more difficult to figure out how to repair or repay, and so you have to just kind of get creative in order to somehow make it up to the other person. Do your best to make it up to them as best you can. And then the 5th part is commitment to change. And the reason that you're trying to change is so that you don't hurt them the same way again. Now, some change, again, is, it's real easy. Like, let's say you leave the toilet seat up after you go to the restroom, and you commit, okay, I'm not gonna do that again. You've told me a million times, I promise I'm not going to do that anymore. Or, I will tie off the bread bag after I get a piece of bread out. I won't just let the bread go stale on the counter. Like, those are kind of simple, I'll do my dishes after I use them, that type of thing. Or I promise I'll turn in my reports on time at work, or whatever it is. Those are simple ones. Sometimes it's a little more complicated. It might be, an addiction or a compulsion, whether a substance abuse issue, a behavioral issue, something more complex. And it might mean, I'm gonna go to therapy so that I can figure out why I keep doing this, or I'm gonna join a recovery group or support group, or I'm gonna get some extra training so that I don't, continue to so that I can do my job more effectively. Whatever it is, sometimes it's a process, and you can't fix it all at once, but you can commit to a change process so that you don't hurt the other person the same way again. Now, when you have harmed somebody, what you've done is you've breached trust. And so the amends process is meant to communicate, I understand what I've done, I'm taking steps to rectify it, I'm making it up to you as best as I can, and I'm making changes so that I don't hurt you the same way again, so that you can trust me again. You can make yourself vulnerable to me again, and you can trust me for that. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. They're not going to trust you again right away. They may not want to be vulnerable to you again right away. It may take some time. And the key is to continue working your amends process, your change process, regardless of whether they've forgiven you, regardless of whether they welcome you back with open arms, because that's part of how you show that you understand that what you've done is wrong, and not just wrong because they say it's wrong, but wrong because you agree that it's wrong. You are essentially confessing that you have broken your own moral code. Regardless of what they think, regardless of what they feel, you're saying, this is not the person that I want to be. I want to change, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So trust that is broken is rebuilt, and remember this, by evidenced change over time. It's not just your words. It's not just a fancy amends or a pretty amends or a heartfelt amends. There actually has to be change. And that there is no shortcut to that. You have to do it consistently over time. And as the person you've harmed witnesses you making this effort, working your change process, regardless of whether they encourage you or not, you're doing it because you think it's the right thing to do. That is going to rebuild trust. They're going to see that you've changed. They're going to feel more comfortable being vulnerable around you. They're going to open up to you. You know, they might test the waters for a while, make sure you're trustworthy. But eventually, if you keep going down the path of making amends, sometimes it's called a living amends, you know, not just a words that you say, but actual change in action over time, you will rebuild trust and the relationship will be moving towards full reconciliation. All right, and so that is what we're going to talk about in the next video, is reconciliation, when you have forgiveness on one side and amends on the other. But sometimes you have amends on one side and not forgiveness on the other, or forgiveness on one side and not amends on the other. So we're going to talk in the next video about reconciliation, and also about those times when one party has done their work but the other party hasn't done theirs. What do you do? Okay, so I will talk to you about that in the next video, and I'll see you there.